the thing that stuck out to me, this is not normally how I process a game. I enjoy watching the games. Of course, I want to see them win, but win or lose, I usually enjoy watching the games. I'll admit this though. I'm usually a bit of an official sympathist here, but I didn't really. It kind of took the wind out of my sails when they had that whole call with the Parkinson touchdown in the Lions game. And I know that if they would have made what I felt was the correct ruling, that the ball still would have been on the one and the game still would have finished the same way. I'm not saying that the Rams deserve to win that game. They're one of the top teams in the NFC. They looked great. I'm not taking anything away from them. It just took the wind out of my sails a little bit because I didn't understand how they could have arrived at that particular conclusion out of the whole myriad of conclusions for that play. I like to analyze how they get there. That just seems to be happening more, not just with the Lions. I'm not doing a Lions thing. I'm not. A lot of people like to go, my team. It's always your team because that's the team you watch. I watch a lot of games because we cover it a lot, especially for the counter intel segments for the show.
Right.
So I do have to be well versed in the game. So I see this in random games that I have no attachment for. It just seems to be happening more often, and I don't want to attack the refs in the normal way. I just feel like maybe we need to position things better here because you've got more technology than ever, you've got more training available than ever. How are we not doing better? I know the guys are faster and stuff too, and that's tough, but you've got a bigger budget, you've got more technology. How are we not doing better in these games?
Well, first off, that wasn't even a catch.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so
it wasn't even a catch.
Even if you want to go, that's why I say I don't know how you get to that conclusion, because if you want to say, okay, he was down at the one, which is what a lot of people landed on. Okay, I can kind of wrap my mind around that.
Right.
If you want to say he lost possession and regained it, but survived the ground, I don't understand how those things don't compute. So
right.
if he did indeed cross the end line there, the end zone line, then how did he survive the ground, which that ball was moving, and then he had the whole out of bounds thing. There was just so many things that was the least likely conclusion that I could have possibly saw the actual ruling for that.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you ever read the pool reports that the referees do.
I'm going to start doing that more because I've been interested in this. And I want to start kind of studying it more, but please go ahead.
Reporter, why was it called a touchdown? Because we said it was.
Well, I think this was actually, I did read this. I think this was because this has become a big thing on the scene actually. So I think this was a Will Birchfield bit. He's a beat writer and he's also on the radio. He put this out there and now it's getting retweeted and repurposed. Okay, so because I don't think the pool report for this game has actually been released to the public yet. So that's why I say this. We'll verify that. But this has been, I'm glad you brought this up, Big G, because I've seen several people get caught on this in social media. But I think it brings up an interesting point because we've been talking about this thin line on the show between kind of reality and basically the imposter parody accounts that exist out there. Now, some of them are very pronounced. They're supposed to be parody accounts. They say it right in the account. One of the ones I follow in the NBA is called NBA Centel. They have a very good balance. They clearly know the NBA very well, and they release these stories that seem very true, but they say right on their account, this is a parody account, everybody knows. But they just released a story a few weeks ago about there being interest in Anthony Davis going to the Pistons, and then now that's an actual story. So that's how accurate their stories are sometimes. The first time it was released on the beat, I question whether or not they had taken it from NBA Centel or it was actually becoming a real story. That's what's happening with this story, because Will Birchfield wrote that, and he's a reputable reporter, but he was doing a bit on his X account, and then it got retweeted, and people took it as real because he's not a parody account. So you get something from somebody on the beat, and because I saw some of the other beat writers bringing that up, saying, oh, it's tough to do that as a beat writer, because even if you're joking, it's like, well, that's going to be taken as gospel.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because that's where you get your information from.
Yeah, if you're a known parody account, okay, ha, ha, ha. But if you're a quote-unquote legitimate writer and then all of a sudden you say something that just isn't true and is satire, your credibility's gone.
Exactly, and somebody did bring, because I think Dan Miller, who works with him a decent amount, was then retweeting it and wondering if something had happened to his account, because I get what he was doing there, because he was kind of doing this stranger than fiction thing that happens sometimes, where you could almost believe that they would say that, because that's the explanations have not been up to the standard that we probably deserve as fans and followers of the game, because they just, it's not even about, that's why I say I don't want to do, let's blame the refs. The Rams should have won. I'm taking that out of it. They played well enough to win. That's not the discussion here. I think it's more about these athletes are training so hard, all the coaches, all the athletes, and I want to talk about this with Shane on Thursday too, because we've talked about officiating some. You need to make sure that the officiating level is rising at the same rate that the playing and coaching levels are, because all those things need to be elite to operate properly.
And that brings me to my number one gripe, complaint, itch thing ever. The National Football League is the most valuable league in the world. Well, not in the world, but of the four majors. And they bring in the most revenue. They bring in the most everything. The Super Bowl's the highest watch program. They are the only league with part-time officials. They are the only league that does not have full-time officials, and I don't understand how. They have part-time officials, and I think they're getting to the point where they're just fanboys who are there to shake hands with Patrick Mahomes or Matthew Stafford or Jared Goff or. Let's hire them full-time. Let's make them go through year-long training. I don't want some guy that's Walt the janitor 8 months of the year and then a pro football referee the other however many months. Basketball's got full-time officials. Hockey's got full-time officials. Baseball's got full-time officials.
This is one of my main, I'm right with you here, Big G, because this is one of my main things about the whole thing is you definitely want to pay them appropriately to maintain the integrity of the game, all of that, and pay them for a full year, but the off season, quote unquote, for them is continued. It's almost like, to me, it would be like being a teacher. The people that aren't, I've tons of friends that are teachers, and they always get a little frustrated when people say, well, you have 3 months off. It doesn't really end up being 3 months off if you're a teacher. You end up going later than the students at the end of the year. Sure. You start sooner, and you do a lot of continued education in the summer times if you're doing it right. And that's what I envision for a proper referee training program, is if you're doing some training in the off season and you get the new rules and you're actually going back to school every year, where you're making sure, hey, maybe they even review their own film film and do. There's all sorts of ideas here. I'm working on a couple connections to actually get a referee, a former referee, because I don't want it to be a current one, because then it would be harder for them to, I think, speak as freely. But somebody that's got experience that can help us break this down, because it's a lot harder than you and I can both imagine. Watching it on our couches, seeing everything in 4K or whatever we're viewing things in now on the TVs,
absolutely.
and they slow it down in slow motion and they zoom in on everything. I totally understand all that, and that's why I have been empathetic to the plight of the officials. But it is time that we put some things in place here, because why I lamented that call wasn't because it went against the Lions. That wasn't even why. I think that I did think that disrupted the momentum a little bit of the game, and then it led to the scenario at the end where they had to score a couple touchdowns, never got the ball back.
Yep.
I think we could have had a classic Matt Stafford, Jared Goff shootout that, by the way it was going, the Rams probably should have and could have won still.
Right.
But it would have been a true shootout at the end, and we kind of lost out on the last part of an epic game, because not only did we have that, but you watch it very intently too, Big G. The next play from scrimmage was a combination of a hit to Jared Goff's head and a pass interference on the same play that they missed. So now I realize that there were probably calls that they missed on the Rams side. Again, I'm not doing the Lions thing. I just don't like it when it affects the game play. I don't like it when it makes us miss out on what could have been with a very exciting ending in what's developing into a great rivalry of two quarterbacks that got traded for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.